The air inside the courthouse was thick with anticipation. Wooden benches creaked under the weight of a packed audience. Reporters scribbled furiously into notepads, their pens racing to keep up with the storm of whispers that filled the room. Camera shutters clicked in rapid succession, capturing every nervous shuffle, every shifting glance. The scent of coffee and ink from hastily printed newspapers mixed with the faint polish of old oak furniture. Then, the doors at the back creaked open. Heads turned instantly. A murmur spread like fire across the gallery. Walking slowly down the aisle was a boy, barely 16, maybe 17 at most, dressed in a suit far too big for his frame. The sleeves hung over his wrists, the pants bunched at his ankles. His tie, slightly crooked, seemed almost like a child's attempt to imitate adulthood. There was something in his eyes. Nervous, yes, but determined. Every step he took down that long courtroom aisle echoed louder than the last, bouncing off the marble walls, demanding attention. A few reporters whispered in disbelief. "Is that him? The boy?" Some scoffed, others leaned forward with curiosity. As he reached the defense table, he placed a battered leather briefcase on it, clearly worn from years of use, perhaps borrowed, perhaps gifted. He drew a slow breath, trying to quiet the storm inside his chest. Around him, adults in suits, lawyers, journalists, officers, watched with an expression that was equal parts confusion and skepticism. This was no ordinary day. The courtroom was about to witness something it had never seen before. A teenager stepping into the shoes of an attorney, standing against a system designed to doubt him before he even spoke. The boy had barely settled at the defense table when a hush rippled across the courtroom. All eyes turned toward the elevated bench where the judge sat, draped in his black robe like a king upon a throne. His face was stern at first, scanning papers in front of him. Then slowly, a smirk tugged at the corners of his mouth as he looked down at the young figure standing nervously below. The judge leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, and raised an eyebrow. "Well, well, what do we have here?" His voice dripped with sarcasm, echoing through the courtroom speakers. A ripple of laughter broke out among the audience. Even some of the jurors exchanged bewildered glances. The boy, Marcus, kept his eyes steady, though his heart pounded in his chest. He could feel the heat of humiliation pressing down on him, heavier than the weight of that oversized suit. He adjusted his tie, trying to hide the tremor in his hand. The judge wasn't finished. "Are you lost, son? This isn't your high school debate club. This is a court of law." His words struck like daggers, each syllable designed to belittle. The gallery roared with laughter, some covering their mouths, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Even the bailiff, a tall man in uniform standing near the bench, shifted uncomfortably. He shook his head with a sigh, as though silently saying, "This is ridiculous." Cameras flashed, reporters scribbled furiously, eager to capture this humiliating moment for tomorrow's headlines. It was a spectacle, a child standing where men and women twice his age had fought careers worth of battles. But beneath the mockery and laughter, Marcus clenched his jaw. He refused to bow. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the storm of doubt and ridicule, a spark was lit. A silent vow whispered in his heart. "They'll see. They'll all see." The laughter faded into murmurs as Marcus rose from his chair. His oversized suit seemed to weigh him down, but he straightened his shoulders. His voice trembled for only a moment before he steadied it. "Your Honor," he said firmly, "I'm here to represent my client." A hush swept over the courtroom. Reporters froze mid-scribble. The jury stared. Even the prosecutor, who had been smirking from his table, tilted his head with surprise. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Represent? As in, you're the defense attorney?" Marcus lifted his chin. "Yes, Your Honor." He tapped the worn briefcase. "And I intend to defend my client to the fullest extent of the law." Gasps rippled through the audience. Someone whispered, "Is this a joke?" Another said, "He can't be serious." But Marcus stood unwavering, his voice louder this time. "I may be young," he declared, "but the truth doesn't care about age. Justice doesn't care about who delivers it." For the first time, the laughter ceased completely. The courtroom wasn't sure whether to mock him further or to lean in and listen. The judge leaned forward now, no longer smirking but scrutinizing. "Young man," he said slowly, "do you have any proof that you're qualified to stand in this courtroom?" Marcus reached into his briefcase and pulled out a neatly folded document. His hands no longer trembled. He unfolded it carefully and handed it to the bailiff. "This," Marcus said clearly, "is my law degree, earned at the age of 16. And this," he added, producing another paper, "is my certification from the State Bar Association." The bailiff delivered the papers to the judge. Silence swallowed the room as the judge adjusted his glasses, scanning them carefully. The courtroom waited. Seconds stretched like hours. Then, the judge's eyes widened, just slightly, but enough for everyone to notice. A wave of gasps rolled through the gallery. Reporters scribbled furiously. The jury exchanged stunned looks. Even the prosecutor leaned back, his smirk faltering. The judge cleared his throat. "Well, it appears everything is in order." His tone had shifted, still skeptical, but tinged with surprise. For the first time, the weight of disbelief began to shift, just slightly, in Marcus's favor. The prosecutor called the first witness, a nervous shopkeeper who claimed to have seen Marcus's client near the crime scene. The man spoke quickly, eager to please. "I saw him that night, standing near the alley just before it happened." The prosecutor smiled smugly, pacing before the jury. But when Marcus rose to cross-examine, the air shifted. He walked slowly toward the witness, his steps measured, his eyes sharp. "Sir," Marcus began politely, "what time did you say you saw my client?" The witness blinked. Around 9 p.m. Marcus flipped through his papers. "Interesting, because your shop's security cameras show that you closed at 8:30 p.m., and the police report says you left the area immediately after." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The witness stammered, sweating. I must have misremembered." Marcus leaned closer. Misremembered, or perhaps pressured. His voice carried through the silence. The prosecutor's smile faltered. Reporters scribbled furiously, their eyes darting between Marcus and the collapsing witness. The jury whispered to each other. For the first time, the balance shifted. The boy lawyer wasn't just surviving. He was winning. Hours stretched into the evening. One by one, witnesses took the stand, each with stories that painted Marcus's client as guilty. And one by one, Marcus dismantled them. He pointed out contradictions, highlighted gaps in testimony, and produced documents that caught the prosecution off guard. His voice grew steadier with each word, his confidence sharper with every objection sustained. The judge, who once smirked at him, now leaned forward with genuine interest. His eyes no longer mocked but measured. He studied Marcus as though trying to reconcile the teenager before him with the skill of a seasoned attorney. The jury, once distracted, now followed Marcus's every move. Even the bailiff, silent as stone, gave the faintest nod of respect. The prosecutor wiped sweat from his brow, shuffling through papers he thought would bury the defense. But Marcus was relentless. He wasn't just defending his client. He was rewriting the narrative of the trial itself. By the time court adjourned for the day, whispers filled the gallery. "Maybe he's the real deal," someone said. Maybe this kid actually has what it takes. That night, as Marcus sat alone in his small apartment, the weight of the trial pressed down on him. He placed the briefcase on the table and stared at his reflection in the cracked mirror above the sink. This case wasn't just about law, it was personal. He remembered the streets he grew up on, dangerous corners where gangs recruited lost boys. He remembered the night he almost joined them, desperate for belonging. And he remembered the man on trial now, Mr. Johnson, a community mentor, who had pulled him away from that path. In Marcus's memory, the flashback played vividly. A younger Marcus, barely 12, stood on a street corner, tempted by flashing sneakers and whispered promises. Then a strong hand rested on his shoulder. Mr. Johnson's voice cut through the chaos. "You're better than this, son. Don't waste yourself on streets that give nothing back." Tears welled in Marcus's eyes as he recalled those words. Mr. Johnson had saved him from gangs, had pushed him toward books, had believed in him when no one else did. Now Marcus wasn't just fighting for a client, he was fighting for the man who once fought for him. The next morning, the courthouse steps were a frenzy. Reporters swarmed, microphones shoved forward, cameras flashing. Marcus walked through the storm, his briefcase in hand, his oversized suit hanging loose, but his posture proud. "Marcus, Marcus, how does it feel to be the youngest attorney in the state?" shouted one reporter. "Do you really think you can win?" asked another. Marcus paused at the top of the courthouse stairs, turning to face the sea of microphones. His voice was calm, measured, and clear. "I'm not here to prove my age," he said firmly. "I'm here to prove the truth." The crowd erupted, questions flying from every direction. But Marcus didn't stay. He pushed through the doors, disappearing into the halls of justice, leaving behind a storm of headlines waiting to be written. Day 2 of the trial dawned heavy with tension. The air inside the courtroom was thicker than before, charged with anticipation. The prosecutor entered first, his jaw tight, his steps sharp. His smile was gone, replaced by determination. Moments later, Marcus appeared. He carried his briefcase with steady hands, his eyes unshaken. The reporters in the gallery leaned forward, eager for the rematch. The judge glanced between the two opponents. It was no longer a matter of novelty. This was war. 10, the prosecutor called his strongest witness, a veteran detective with decades of experience. The man's uniform was crisp, his badge gleaming, his voice steady. "I've served this city for 20 years, he declared confidently, "and I can say without doubt that the defendant was present at the scene." The jury nodded along, comforted by his authority. The prosecutor paced proudly, each question designed to strengthen the detective's credibility. Marcus listened quietly, scribbling notes. But inside, he knew authority wasn't the same as truth. When Marcus rose, the detective gave him a dismissive glance. But Marcus walked with quiet confidence. "Detective," Marcus began, "you say you saw my client at the scene at 9:15 p.m., correct?" "Yes." Marcus held up a photograph. "This is a frame from the security footage of a gas station 5 miles away. It shows my client buying a soda at exactly 9:15 p.m. The courtroom gasped. Reporters scribbled furiously. The jury leaned forward. The detective stammered, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. That can't be right." But the evidence was irrefutable. The mighty detective's testimony cracked before everyone's eyes. The prosecutor, furious, played his final card, a new video showing a figure at the scene. The footage was blurry, but damning. The jury gasped. But Marcus's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer to the projector screen, studying every pixel. Then he smiled faintly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, pointing. "Notice that neon sign in the background? That club didn't even exist until 2 months after the crime." The courtroom exploded with shock. The jury's eyes widened. The prosecutor's face turned red with rage. The evidence wasn't just weak, it was fake. The moment had come. Marcus rose for his closing argument. He stood before the jury, his oversized suit now a symbol, not of weakness, but of courage. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady but filled with passion. "From the start, I've been underestimated, because of my age, because of who I am. But justice isn't about age, or race, or status. Justice is about truth." He paced slowly, meeting the eyes of each juror. "You've seen witnesses lie, you've seen evidence crumble, and you've seen that my client is innocent." He paused, his voice softening. "When I was a boy, this man saved me from a life on the streets. He believed I could be more. Today, I ask you to believe the same, not in me, but in the truth." The courtroom was silent. Even the judge leaned forward, moved by the raw sincerity. The jury filed back in. The foreman stood, his paper trembling in his hand. The courtroom held its breath. "We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty." The words thundered through the room. Cheers erupted, reporters shouted, cameras flashed. The defendant collapsed in tears, clutching Marcus in a hug that spoke louder than words. The boy lawyer had done the impossible. The next morning, newspapers across the nation carried the same headline: "Teen genius attorney stuns courtroom." Front pages showed Marcus descending the courthouse steps at night, cameras flashing, his expression both tired and hopeful. He whispered to himself as he walked into the darkness, "Don't waste it, because this was only the beginning."